Hey, welcome back. Welcome back to the Wealth Seed. This is part two. I did the first half earlier, a little earlier, maybe an hour ago, and then I warned everyone that I was expecting a call because there's been an emergency. So I thank you for. Well, I guess you didn't have much choice, but I thank you anyhow for allowing me to handle that. And we're back. And so come on back into the room. And for those of you who come back, thank you so much. For those of you who are catching this part two and you didn't catch part one, make sure after we're done here to go back to part one and catch part one. Okay, so today we've been talking about the reason why people are horrible with money, and just to refresh your memory, I said that the number one reason why we are horrible with money is the fact that we like to bury our head in the sand. It is something that they have called in the world of psychology the ostrich effect, and I spoke pretty in depth about that in part one. Okay, so you can go and pick up in part one. What we're going to do now is to talk about how we can overcome that, right? How can we get to a place where we are okay with tackling things that are upsetting or bad news, particularly around about our finances, because this is a finance podcast. But how do we push through the fear, the the frustration, and all the other emotions that we may experience, the anxiety, all of these things as it relates to our finances? How can we push through that so that we can get to the other side, right? And what is the other side? The other side is then learning to master your money, and then doing what God intended for you to do from the beginning, which was to be fruitful, to multiply, and to dominate. He wants you to do that in every area of your life, including your finances. So I ignored my finances until March of 2012, I believe. Okay, until March of 2012. And I can tell you that the ignoring started um, probably after my oldest daughter was born. Um, I had had, I was in college, my junior year in college, going into my senior year. I had a couple of credit cards at that point. Once she was born, she had to have the best of everything, of course. And so, I maxed out those credit cards. And then, just began to get into other types of debt. I got into the whole cycle of, now this is after college, got into the whole cycle of payday loans and, just really bad cycles. And though I was making good money, um, once I got my professional job that had to do something with my degree, I was making good money, right? And so I shouldn't have been as tight in my finances, but I was, because I had had all this credit card debt, I had some medical debt, I had payday loans, I had all kinds of stuff that was going on. And so instead of tackling it, I avoided it, right? So I think I mentioned the last time I didn't open, very rarely did I open bills. I just felt like those will sit there and wait until I get something or some money, then I'll go open it. But of course, by the time that happens, another bill has come in and then it's higher because of the interest, right? So it was this vicious circle. And so finally, in after going through bankruptcy, after going through a divorce, after going through foreclosure, after going through repossessions, um, finally it was like, you need to do something, right? And I'm going to tell you, and this is what was on the podcast last week, some of the reasons that kept me, um, besides me burying my head in the sand. There was a point, like I said, in which my head did come up out of the sand a little bit. But then it was like, what will people think about me? Particularly family. Like, I'm supposed to be the oldest. I'm supposed to set the example. Um, just and largely, what would people think about me, right? Because here I am now. I have this professional career. I dress up every day. You know what I'm saying? And then it just looks like I've got life together. Um, and at least that's what I thought, because I'm sure there were people looking at me who could probably see through all of it, right? Because you have those people who can do that. And so, yeah. So therefore, I just would keep my head buried in the sand, right? It'll all somehow just go away, right? If I just keep on going, keep, pretending like nothing is wrong, it'll all somehow just go away. And so finally, in March of 2012, I had to have a good talk um, with myself, and and say, like, hey, either either you're going to get through this and overcome it, or then this is just the end of life, right? It was that serious. And so I decided, okay, I'm no longer going to put this off, right? Now, I'm going to tell you, all the while I was putting it off, oh, I'll get to it next year or next month, or and every new year that would come in, I'd be like, this is the year. And then I'll be like, life is life, and there's too much going on, especially at that time. You're going through a divorce and bankruptcy and all kinds. Life is lifing. But what I should have understood is that even though life is lifing, God is always Godding, right? And so I kept putting it off, and I knew to the core of me that it was a bad decision to keep putting it off, because it's like driving a vehicle that needs to be serviced. The light comes on, and you just keep driving, right? And you'll be like, you just ignore the light, like the light is just going to go away, right? But what happens is the light doesn't just go away. The problem gets worse. Or I've also been in a situation with the car where the light did go away, but that did not mean that the problem just went away. The problem was still getting worse, okay? Including the fact that the light was like, look, I've been on too long, the fuse is out, right? So you can be on your journey and say you're putting it off, and then you can have a moment in time where things seem to be getting better. So that light goes off, and then you're like, okay, maybe I don't need the help. Maybe I'll be okay. But that's not the case, right? So we have to get out of this place of putting it off, right? Yeah, it's 2024. I'm going to, finally, I'm going to get my finances together. Now we're in April, right? Mid-April. And we still haven't done anything, right? Head still buried in the sand. So I had finally decided in March of 2012 that I was going to do whatever it took to get out of that financial bind, right? Because I didn't like the other option, which was to roll over and die. So whether that was figuratively or literally, I didn't like that option. Okay. I, was not raised to quit. And so once I got myself, got back to myself in my mind, well, and I don't need to say that God got me back to myself. It wasn't me that got me back to myself, but it was the Holy Spirit that kept on, right? And finally I listened. So I decided that I was going to commit myself, be dedicated to getting myself out of that hole, right? I didn't even know whether or not I could, make more money than I've ever made before. Any of that. None of that was on my mind at that time. It was just, can I just get out of this hole that I'm in, right? And so I committed myself and dedicated myself to that. And in fact, I had prayed to God and said, all right, Lord, I'm ready, right? Send whomever, because I didn't know where to start. I didn't know who to go to. I didn't know who to talk to. And even though you get to a point where you know what, this is my story, I'm not ashamed of it, you still don't want to just go blab it out to the entire world, right? You want to talk to people who will um, be good stewards of your story, and you want to talk to people who will be able to give you the help that you need, right? So I prayed to the Lord and I asked him, I said, Lord, put the people in my path, right? Send them to me. And so, literally, like days after that prayer, a lady on my job came to me. One of my coworkers came to me and said, "Hey, I just met with a financial coach. Would you like to meet with?" And before she could finish the sentence, I was like, "Yes," right? Yes. And so I met with this person who is still a coach to be today. And I committed and did what I had to do. Now, was it a little shameful, a little embarrassing, a little to have to just pull out everything that I had been doing financially, all these payday loan things I had been caught up in, all the debt that I had, from credit card debt to student loan debt to um, car loans and repossessions and foreclosures, and I mean, it was a mess. It was an entire mess. Was I embarrassed? Was I ashamed? Absolutely. But something in me was like, I can't allow that to hold me back, because that's what the enemy will do, right? He will allow shame and guilt and all of these other negative feelings to encourage you to keep putting it off, right? And so I just had to decide that the hurt of being, the pain of being in that situation was more than the pain of feeling ashamed by whoever may be looking at my numbers. Okay, so I sat down with the person. We had made another appointment so I could come with all of my financials, all of my information, and I took a deep breath and handed it to the person. But the thing was, after I had given, and he hadn't even done anything yet, but the fact that I had just given this over, right? With there was a sigh of relief. There was a sigh of relief. And then that person, because they now are the expert, they can look at the situation with a fresh pair of eyes. They know a whole lot more than I know, right? They know various tips and tricks and you know, uh, concepts and all of these things that they can teach me to get out of the hole that I was in. And I was so surprised, so surprised, because I was thinking that it was going to be something difficult to do, right? Like some complex things that I had to learn. And it was not. It was very simple stuff that we had just not been taught in schools, not taught by the banks, not taught in our homes. We're not taught in our homes because people don't know what they don't know. We are not taught in the banks because the banks have to make money. So if they teach you how to get free, they don't make money. And then we're not taught in the schools because I don't even want to start on that. Okay. So, so I brought my information in, and then I let them do their magic, right? They came back to me with this plan. And when I saw the plan, I was like, this is doable. That was all that I needed, was this step-by-step plan and the simple concepts, right? And I was like, this is it. I can do this, right? So I committed myself, I dedicated myself to taking those steps, right? And it took time, right? Because it took time to get in the hole, right? And it also takes time to get out of the hole. So sometimes we want things to happen quickly, but it takes time to get out of the hole. But nonetheless, you can get out of the hole, right? And God can restore everything that you've lost and more, right? So we have got to get out of this place where we just kind of bury our head in the sand and pretend like everything is okay. And if I avoid it, all will be well, because that is so dangerous. The future you will kick your present you behind because you're going to find that you have to work until you die. Or you're going to find that if you're trying to just press for retirement or something like that, then you're going to be living on little bit of money. That is not freedom, right? And that is not what God intended, right? And so, or you're always having this struggle all your life. There is never any kind of, time when you can just breathe, right? So I don't know about you, but for me, I was just like, I can't do this the rest of my life. I saw other people doing this and I'm like, I can't do this. So the pain of being in that was, um, it no longer outweighed my desire to get out of it. Right. So what am I saying to you in terms of how do you overcome? Well, I'm saying one, we got to stop pretending. Okay. You got to make a decision. That's number one. Make a decision, a firm decision that you're going to do differently. Two, you can't make any more excuses. Can't worry about, well, these numbers look really bad. I'm ashamed. I'm embarrassed. I'm this, I'm that. Or what will people think? Or, life is lifing right now. I'm going through a divorce right now. Or this is just not the time. I'll wait till my kids get out of high school. Or what all these million and one excuses that we make, it's time out for that. Right. So I had to make a decision. And then I had to stop making excuses because believe me, I had a ton of them. Okay. I'm a single mom. I'm this, I'm that. I got all these things going on. It's too much. I don't have time. Listen, we can't afford not to do that. Right. So made a decision, stop making excuses. The third thing I did was to get organized. So my financial coach gave me a list of things that I needed to bring to so I can start getting organized so that he could help me to get organized. So I went through that list and I got everything. And then I missed not one thing unless it just didn't apply to me. But I got everything, right? And then I brought it to him. Why? So now I could know my net worth. I could know what my credit score is. I could know, my income and expenses. I could know exactly where I stood in all of these areas, right? And, some people think about that and they'd be like, I'd rather get a root canal. You know what I'm saying? But let me tell you something. I would rather do this, right? Because on the other side of it is freedom, right? And so I had to get over, talking about money is taboo and all that. I had to get over all of that. And I had to, again, make a decision. No excuses, get organized. Okay. And then once I was able to get organized, okay, brought him the stuff, organized it, then we were able to come up with a game plan. Okay, which included things like, okay, let's get your first $1,000 set aside in your emergency fund. This is how we're going to do it. Let's get your life insurance in place. And this is why you need to have it at this stage in your life, even though you're like, things are horrible right now. Do I need something else to pay for? But it's like getting rid of the stuff that you don't need to be paying for and making room for the things that are going to change the trajectory of your financial life, right? Mike Tyson says something, he's like, everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, right? So you can't, these emergencies, they come and they can definitely punch you in the mouth and you've got to be prepared, right? So my financial coach helped me to do that, have my emergency fund and begin to contribute to it consistently without touching it, help me to get my life insurance in place, help me to begin to beef up my retirement, help me to begin considering other investing options, right? And because the concepts were so simple and I was just like blown away, I was like, I need to be teaching this to everybody, right? And so that's how I ended up in this industry. So I went and learned what I needed to learn, got all those licenses, yada, yada, yada. And I've been helping people ever since, right? To do the exact same thing, Okay. So let me give you these steps again. One, you need to make a decision and commit to it. 2, make no excuses. Okay. 3, is what I was thinking organized, but I call it getting exposed, right? Getting over the fact that you're embarrassed about your numbers, you're this, that, or the other. It's time to get exposed. Okay. And the reason that you get exposed is so that 4, you can know exactly where you are and get a game plan together, establish a game plan, a step-by-step game plan, and then 5, implement. Okay. Implement the game plan. It's not enough to have the game plan in your hand. Now you actually have to do the work. And then 6, have a long-term mindset, because again, this is not overnight. You're going to see some quick wins, but this is a long-term commitment. God has given me everything that I've ever lost. He's given it back and more. And there are still other things that I want to do and I want to accomplish, and he's going to allow for me to do that too, right? This is a long-term game. This is a long-term game. All right. And know that even though you have the plan now and now you're on a different trajectory, that there still will be some setbacks of some kind in your finances. It will still happen. And it's okay, because now, though, you have a long-term mindset and you have a game plan. And you go back like any other game plan, any other plan, and you review it periodically. That's number 7, right? Review, reevaluate, reassess. If something needs to be tweaked, do that, right? And you learn something new and need to apply it, do that. Okay. So that is the way that we will get out of this whole bury our head in the sand kind of thing, this whole avoiding it, because believe me, and you know this already, you know it to be true. When you avoid something, it doesn't make it get better. Oh, I'll just not think about it. It'll go away. I'll just not address it. It'll go away. When has that ever worked? It has never, ever worked. It has never worked. Okay. So I hope these tips have been helpful to you. Thank you for tuning in. Again, make sure you go watch part 1 if you haven't watched part 1 of this. And if you decide right here and now, as a result of watching this, that you want to get your financial life together, you're serious this time, you're going to commit yourself, no excuses. You're going to do the work, right? You're going to be all right with getting exposed. You're going to do the work. And, you need help, right? You understand you need help. Then I want you to schedule a free consultation with me. I have a 30-minute free consultation. It's in the description. The link for it is in the description. It'll say Lexi's calendar and the link underneath it. And I want you to to click on that link and set a 30-minute free consultation. Okay. Share these broadcasts out, part 1 and part 2, share them out. Okay. Because there are other people, I'm sure, on your timeline who need to hear this. Right. And there are people probably on your timeline who are ready. They just don't know who to go to or where to start. All right. So share this with them so that they too can click the link and get on my calendar, and let's have a 30-minute conversation. Doesn't cost you anything except your time. And that 30 minutes could change your life. All right. Thank you for tuning in to episode 60 of The Wealth Seed. This is part 2, and we'll see you next time. God bless.